The whiskey hit Eli Red Elk's throat like fire, but it did nothing to quiet the pounding in his chest. The Deadwood saloon swirled with voices, boots, sweat, and gold dust, but all he could hear was his own breath, sharp and uneven. The poker table sat in the center of it all, lit by a hanging lantern that swayed with every heavy footstep on the warped floor. Cards lay scattered where he'd dropped them, like the broken remains of a choice he couldn't take back. Silas Donnelly leaned across the table with the satisfied smile of a man who enjoyed cornering others for sport. "A bet's a bet, Eli," he said, loud enough for every pair of ears in the saloon to catch. "And you gave your word." Eli tried to swallow the heat rising in his throat. Every man in this town had seen him win horse races, shoot straighter than most military men, and fix a ranch with bleeding hands. But pride didn't matter now. What mattered were the rules of the frontier. A man's word was iron, and he'd spoken his too fast. People gathered close. Boots scraped the floor. Coins clinked in eager fingers. The smell of spilled whiskey hung thick. Eli forced out the words. "Tell them the terms again." Silas grinned, slow and sharp. "You lose, you marry the woman arriving tomorrow. The one my cousin sent from Boston. Clara Easton." A murmur rippled through the room. Someone let out a low whistle. Noah Gray Fox. Eli's closest friend stood near the wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. His dark eyes didn't leave Silas. "You stacked the deck," Noah said quietly. "I saw you watching his hands." And Simmons kept touching his pocket. "Cards don't walk out of a pocket unless someone puts them there." Silas shrugged. "Accusations without proof are just noise, and the cards don't matter anymore." Eli agreed before the last round. We all heard it. Eli hated himself for letting his anger guide his mouth, hated how the whiskey had loosened his caution, hated how Silas had looked at him smug, taunting, like he already owned the outcome. Eli straightened slowly. "Why me, Silas? Why not you?" Silas spread his hands. "You're young, strong, capable. Your ranch may be small, but it's stable. My cousin needs a husband. You need a lesson in humility. Seems like a fair trade." The laughter around them didn't hurt as much as Eli expected. What hurt more was the way Noah looked at him, as if seeing the consequences hours before Eli did. Eli pushed back from the table, fists clenched. "I won't marry a stranger just because you think it's amusing." "You already agreed," Silas said. "And in Deadwood a promise is worth more than gold." Unless his smile sharpened. "You want to be known as a man who breaks his word." Silas wanted him angry, wanted him humiliated, wanted something Eli couldn't yet see. Before Eli could speak, someone called out, "Let him off, Silas. No man should have to take a wife like she's a prize hog." More laughter. Silas lifted his chin. "Clara Easton is not a hog. She's a refined woman. But she's difficult to place. And her father is a man who prefers to settle things quietly." Eli frowned. What kind of father sends his daughter across the country to marry a stranger? Silas's smile didn't reach his eyes. The powerful kind. A cold thread wound down Eli's spine. Something was off. Something big. But he had no proof, only instincts sharpened by years of surviving the harsh line between Lakota life and frontier law. He stepped forward until he stood inches from Silas. "I'll meet her. But if she doesn't want this, if she refuses, I walk away." "You can ask her that yourself," Silas said. "Tomorrow at dawn." Noah stepped in, voice low but heated. "Eli, don't let him do this to you." Eli looked at his friend, at the concern in his eyes. I gave my word, Noah, and he twisted it. Maybe Eli said, but I still gave it. Noah exhaled sharply, frustration deepening the lines on his brow. You're walking into a trap. Maybe. Eli turned toward the door. But tomorrow I stand where I said I would. Behind him, Silas chuckled softly, a sound that crawled under Eli's skin and promised more trouble than the bet itself. Outside, the night air hit Eli like a slap. Cold, sharp, honest. The sky stretched wide over deadwood stars scattered like embers across black velvet. Horses stamped and snorted at the hitching post. Lanterns glowed from brothels and saloons, casting flickering shapes against the dirt. Eli leaned against the wooden post outside the saloon throat tight. The weight of what he'd agreed to pressed down like a stone. Noah followed him out the footsteps, soft against the dust. Eli. This woman from Boston. You don't know anything about her. I know enough, Eli said. She didn't choose this any more than I did. Noah shook his head. Silas knows who she is. And he knows something else, too. Something he's not saying. Eli pushed off the post, staring toward the dark hills. Tomorrow I'll find out. Noah studied him for a long moment. If you walk into this blind, you might lose more than your pride. Eli's jaw tightened. I've already lost that. The silence between them was heavy. Familiar. The silence of two men who had faced storms together but sensed a different kind of danger now. One wrapped in silk and secrets. Finally, Noah asked, You gonna ride home? Eli shook his head. No. Need a walk. Noah nodded and stepped away. I'll be back at dawn. You're not doing this alone. Eli didn't answer. He was already staring at the horizon where the road from the east cut through the hills. Somewhere out there was a stagecoach carrying a woman with a name that meant trouble. A woman about to become his wife in front of half the town. A stranger tied to him by a bad hand of cards. He couldn't shake the unease crawling under his skin. Silas's words echoed in his skull. Her father prefers to settle things quietly. Eli didn't know what that meant. But he knew one thing about powerful men: they rarely gave up their grip without a fight. And tomorrow, a woman fleeing a life he didn't yet understand would step into his. He pulled in a long breath and let it burn through him with the cold. Tomorrow would change everything. And that was the thought that haunted him as he walked into the darkness. I will not run from the life they designed for me, but I will choose the life I walk into. Those were the first words Clara Easton spoke in Deadwood, and Eli Red Elk wasn't sure if she meant them for Silas Donnelly for the crowd, or for herself. She stepped down from the stagecoach with the poise of someone raised far from this place, far from dust and cattle and the hard edge of frontier life. She held her bag with a gloved hand, spine straight, chin lifted, despite the wind whipping across the street, and every pair of eyes in Deadwood locked on her. She didn't flinch. Eli had expected someone plain, maybe nervous, maybe fragile, someone who would plead or panic. But Clara Easton looked carved from marble, steady and unreadable. Her ash-blonde hair was pinned beneath a modest travel bonnet, her coat a deep shade of blue that stood out like rare silk against the rough boards and muddy street. Behind her, Silas Donnelly swaggered forward as if presenting a prized animal. Miss Clara Easton, he announced to the watching crowd. Your groom. He gestured toward Eli with a grin. Eli wished for another shot of whiskey, or a way to turn invisible. Anything would be better than standing there knowing every whisper in town was sharpening like a blade. Clara studied Eli the way a banker might study a contract. Not unkind, but calculating, appraising. "You're younger than I expected," she said softly. Her voice was steady, clear, refined, not a hint of tremor. "Cousin Silas implied you were older." "Old enough," Eli said, keeping his tone calm. "I don't know what he told you, but it doesn't matter." She cut him off with a small shake of her head. "I am here. The arrangements were made. We will proceed." "Proceed," Eli echoed. He'd planned to ask if she wanted this, if she had been forced into the same trap he had. But she moved right past him toward the preacher, who Silas had fetched and positioned like a prop for a performance. Silas's grin widened. "She's agreeable, see? Everything simple." Noah Gray Fox stepped up behind Eli. "Simple isn't the word I'd choose," he muttered. Eli breathed out through his nose. Clara didn't look fearful or rushed. She didn't even glance at Silas as if she already knew he wasn't worth her attention. There was control in every movement she made. But beneath that control was something else, something Eli recognized. A woman who had been prepared for battles that didn't happen in saloons. The preacher cleared his throat. "Well now, if the two of you are ready." The crowd pressed closer, eager for the spectacle. Women whispered behind gloved hands. Men elbowed each other, smirking. Eli stepped beside Clara, careful not to get too close. "Miss Easton," he murmured low enough for only her. "If you don't want this, you say so. I don't force, it is already done," she said, not looking at him. "And I am not made of porcelain, Mr. Red Elk." Silas barked a laugh. "Perfect match, the two of you." The preacher lifted his Bible. "Join hands." Clara hesitated a fraction of a second, then offered Eli her hand. It was cold, steady, light in his palm, but stiff like she held herself together through sheer will. Eli felt a strange pull in his chest, something that had nothing to do with bets or pride. A woman shouldn't have hands that cold unless she was terrified. But her face was calm, distant, dignified. The preacher began, his voice carrying over the dust and murmurs, "We are gathered here." Eli barely heard the words. He watched Clara instead. Her lashes didn't flutter. Her lips didn't tremble. She stood like a statue built for storms. When it came time for vows, Clara spoke first. "I give my word," she said. "Not I take him, not I do. Just that. I give my word." It struck Eli like a fist. Her word mattered to her more than anything else. He spoke his vows because a man honored his promises, even when the world seemed to tilt beneath him. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher said. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the kiss. Clara stepped away before anyone could speak. She offered her arm to Eli, the gesture crisp, polite, absolute. "Shall we husband?" The word felt foreign in Eli's ears. He took her arm because he had no choice now. But as they walked past the crowd, the whispers followed them like a shadow. "Poor bastard. She'll leave inside a week. She's got secrets. You can see it in her eyes. Silas has plans for them. Just wait." Noah walked close behind, listening too. When they were far enough away from the crowd, he muttered, "This whole thing stinks like rotten meat." Clara froze mid-step. Eli turned to her. "If you want to speak your mind." "Later, Schwam," she said firmly. "Not here. Not surrounded by 100 strangers and half-honest men." Her gaze shifted toward the hills, toward the lonely path leading to Eli's ranch. "Your home is 3 miles west?" she asked. "Yes." "Then let us go," she said. "There are things to discuss. But not in this town." It was not fear in her voice. It was urgency, determination. She wanted distance from Silas, from the crowd, from whatever had driven her across half the country. Eli nodded, feeling that same cold thread from the night before twist tighter inside him. As they walked through Deadwood, people parted like the wake of a ship watching the mismatched pair, a frontier horseman with Lakota blood and a Boston woman with aristocratic bearing. Noah fell into step at Eli's side. "Silas is smirking like a wolf behind you," he murmured. Eli didn't turn. "Let him. He's planning something else. This isn't over." "I know." Clara's voice cut in gently. "Mr. Red Elk, whatever your friend suspects, he is correct." Eli looked at her. Her expression remained calm, but there was a flicker, small, buried, but real, in her eyes. Fear, or perhaps resignation. She met his gaze squarely. "There is more, much more, and you should know it before we reach your home." Before she could continue, a sudden gust of wind kicked dust across the road, forcing her to shield her face. Eli stepped closer, instinctively blocking the worst of it. When the dust settled, she lowered her hand. "Silas lied to you." Eli didn't need more than that to feel the ground shift beneath him. Clara took a breath, steadying herself. "Your life, Mr. Red Elk, will not remain simple after today." Her eyes drifted toward the eastern road, the direction she had come from. "Others are coming," she said softly, "and they will not care about vows." Eli's stomach tightened. Noah whispered, "She means danger." Clara nodded once. "Yes. And it will reach your doorstep sooner than you think." Eli looked ahead to the long stretch of road leading to his cabin, a place he had built with his own hands, a place that had always been his refuge. Now it was about to become the center of a storm he didn't yet understand. "Do not ask what I left behind, Eli. Ask what might be coming after me." Clara spoke those words the moment she crossed the threshold of Eli Red Elk's cabin. They drifted through the dim space like smoke, lingering long after she moved past him and set her travel bag on the small table by the wall. Eli stood just inside the doorway, one hand braced against the frame as if the wood might steady him. He had imagined bringing a wife home someday, someone he knew, someone his heart had chosen. Not this. Not a stranger with a spine of steel and secrets wrapped around her like a second skin. The cabin was modest, no finer than any other frontier home. One room, a loft overhead, a stone hearth, shelves built by hand, a table for two, and a narrow bed pushed neatly against the wall. Clara took it all in with a gaze that didn't judge but assessed. She didn't step lightly. She walked the space like she was studying a map. "This is your home," she finally said, turning to him. "You built it yourself." "Yes." Eli removed his hat and set it on a hook. "Every board. It suits you." He couldn't tell if that was a compliment or an observation. Maybe both. Clara loosened her gloves and placed them on the table, one finger at a time, as if she were unbuttoning some part of herself. Eli watched, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. He wasn't used to a woman like her. Women in Deadwood were loud or blunt or soft-spoken but open. Clara was none of those things. Her voice carried a quiet firmness, her movements controlled her thoughts, hidden like cards tucked inside a gambler's sleeve. She removed her bonnet next, and a few strands of pale hair slipped free, brushing against her cheek. It softened her features for a moment. But then she straightened, and the softness vanished. "You live alone?" she asked. "I did," Eli said, "until this morning." Something flickered across her face, something like regret or guilt, but it vanished quickly. Eli gestured toward the table. You can sit. I'll get water. Clara nodded and took the nearest chair back, straight hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked like she belonged in a parlor in Boston, not a cabin on Lakota land. But she didn't complain. Not a word. Eli stepped outside for the bucket he kept near the porch. The moment he filled it from the well, he took a slow breath, letting the cold air cool his thoughts. Noah's warning echoed in his skull. She's running from something. When Eli returned inside, Clara was studying the small shelf above the hearth, where he kept arrowheads from his childhood feathers Thomas Running Bear had given him, and a small, carved figurine of a hawk. You are Lakota, she said quietly. Half Eli said. My mother was Lakota. My father was white. Clara turned to him, expression unreadable. Deadwood is not kind to men who don't fit into its narrow lines. Eli set the bucket down. I don't bend so easily, and that is why Silas chose you. She lowered herself back into the chair. He needed someone who wouldn't run. Eli's jaw tightened. You knew the bet was coming. Clara looked away, her eyes drifting toward the window, where the horizon stretched in a soft line of dusk. No. I didn't know Silas would manipulate a marriage. But I knew he had plans. I knew he wasn't helping me out of kindness. Eli leaned forward, bracing both hands against the table. Clara, what exactly did you ask him to do? She inhaled very slowly, as if preparing to peel back a wound. I asked him for somewhere safe, somewhere to disappear. Her gaze lifted to his, and for the first time all day, the composure cracked. Just a little. I did not ask to be married off like cattle. A sharp knock on the outer door stopped Eli from answering. Clara startled, her fingers tightening around the edge of her skirt. Eli moved to the door carefully, rifle still leaning against the wall, but within reach. He opened the door to find Noah Gray Fox standing on the porch, breathing hard as if he'd ridden fast. Eli, Noah said, voice low, troubles stirring in town. Eli stepped out and shut the door behind him. What kind Silas is talking more now? Noah's gaze flicked toward the cabin. He says your new wife is worth more than a herd of longhorns. Says she's got powerful men chasing her. Eli felt the truth go cold in his blood. Clara was behind the door waiting. He opened it again and motioned her outside. She stepped out, arms wrapped tight around herself despite the warm evening wind. Noah nodded to her respectfully. Miss Easton. Mrs. Red Elk, she corrected softly. At least for now. Noah's brows rose, but he kept his thoughts to himself. Tell me exactly what Silas said, Eli said. Noah folded his arms. He said men would come for her. Men with badges but no conscience. He said she's worth more than all the cattle in the territory. Those were his words. Clara closed her eyes just for a heartbeat. He promised me time. Time for what Eli asked, for my father's reach to grow dim. She opened her eyes again. Bartholomew Easton does not accept rebellion. And I rebelled for the first time in my life. Noah hissed out a breath. Bartholomew Easton, the railroad king. That's the man chasing you, yes, Clara said quietly. And he will send men who do not fail. Eli felt a weight settle onto his shoulders, not from responsibility, but from choice. From the moment he'd taken her hand in marriage, he'd stepped into her storm whether he wanted to or not. Inside the cabin again, Clara moved to the window, looking out across the open land. Shadows stretched long across the grass. She spoke without turning. I know I've put you both in danger, and I understand the cost of protecting me. but I won't hide from the truth. Eli, you deserve to know exactly what stands behind me. She turned, then eyes sharp, voice steady. My father arranged a marriage for me. A man with money, with political power. A man known for breaking his wives. I refused, and my father locked me in my room like a prisoner. I escaped with the help of my maid. I wrote to Silas because he was my mother's cousin. I thought family could be trusted. Pain flickered at the edge of her voice. I was wrong. Eli stepped closer, slow and deliberate. Then what comes next? Clara swallowed. If the Pinkertons don't find me in town tonight, they'll look for people who helped me. They'll search every ranch, every outpost. Noah's voice was quiet but firm. We need a plan. Eli nodded, jaw set. We hide you. We learn everything we can. And when the time comes, we decide how to fight. Clara's shoulders eased just slightly. Not relief, trust. Then a distant sound drifted through the window. Hoofbeats, fast. Noah was already at the door, hand on the rifle. Eli moved beside him, tension sharp as a blade. Clara's voice trembled for the first time. They've found me. But Eli didn't back away. He stepped forward. Because the storm had arrived. When your father owns the railroads, he owns the men who hunt you. Clara spoke those words not with pride and not with fear, but with a cold, exhausted truth that made the small cabin seem even smaller. The hoofbeats outside grew louder, kicking dust against the porch boards. Eli Red Elk didn't wait. He grabbed his rifle from beside the door and motioned Noah Gray Fox to take the back corner window. Clara stood in the center of the room, hands clenched at her sides. The trembling in her fingers betrayed her calm voice, but her chin stayed high. They're not Pinkertons, Noah whispered, peering through the crack. Just one horse. Fast. Eli exhaled slowly. Silas. Could be. The horse skidded to a stop outside. A familiar voice called, breathless and urgent. Eli. It's Caleb Turner from the blacksmith shop. Eli pushed the door open. Caleb, red-faced, sweaty, smelling like iron and dust, hopped off his lathered horse before it fully stopped moving. They're coming, Caleb gasped. Silas has been spreading more lies. Says the woman inside your home is worth a fortune. Says she's got an army of men behind her. Says you kidnapped her, Eli stiffened. He what? Caleb wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Half the saloon believes it. The other half doesn't care. Everyone likes a scandal. But that's not the worst. He reached into his coat and pulled out a telegram slip crumpled at the edges. This came to the post office less than an hour ago. Marked urgent, addressed to Silas Donnelly. Eli took it. The paper shook slightly, not from fear, but from the pressure of realizing how deep this trouble ran. Clara stepped closer. May I? Eli handed her the telegram without hesitation. She scanned it quickly, her face tightening. It's from my father, she whispered. Noah and Caleb exchanged a look. Clara read aloud, voice steady but hollow. Stop her at all costs. Pinkerton unit dispatched. Silas ensure she does not leave territory. Easton. Caleb swallowed hard. Eli. This ain't like chasing a stray cow. These men will shoot first, ask nothing later. Clara folded the paper carefully, as if it were something fragile or poisonous. My father has influence. She let the word hang in the air like a warning. When he wants something back, he turns the whole world into his hunting ground. Eli met her eyes. Then you better tell me everything. For the first time, Clara looked truly tired. She lowered herself into the chair by the hearth, placing her hands in her lap, like someone bracing for a trial. "You deserve to know," she said softly, "because now it's your life he's after too." Noah posted himself near the window again, watchful. Caleb hovered near the door, torn between fear and loyalty. Eli grabbed another chair and sat across from Clara, giving her space to speak. Her eyes flicked between him and the fire. "I was raised in Boston," she began. "My mother died when I was young. My father. There is no gentle way to describe him. He is a man who believes people are assets, tools, and daughters." She paused. "They're bargaining chips." Eli's jaw hardened. Silas knew this. "Yes. My mother's family is connected to his. I wrote Silas when I escaped. I thought he would help me, that he would hide me just long enough for me to disappear on my own terms." She looked down at her gloved hands. But instead, he saw an opportunity. "I imagine my father promised him something in return. Perhaps land. Perhaps money. Silas only needed to keep me here until Pinkertons arrived to drag me back." "And the marriage Eli asked?" Clara lifted her gaze. "Not my idea. Silas suggested it as a way to disguise my identity." A bitter smile tugged at her mouth. "He told me he had found a reliable man. Steady. Older. Someone who would protect me until things settled." Caleb glanced at Eli. Older Clara nodded. "He implied you were a widower." Her eyes softened briefly. "Not a man my own age." Eli leaned back, feeling a strange twist in his gut. "Silas lied to both of us." "Oh yes," Clara whispered. "Silas lies to everyone." Noah moved away from the window. "Why flee at all? Why not fight your father through the law?" Clara met his gaze without flinching. "Because the law bends for men like him." She stood then, walking toward the small window above the sink. "When I refused the marriage he arranged, he locked me in my room. Guards at the door. No letters. No visitors. I was to agree or be broken." Her voice cracked once, only once. "I escaped through the servants' quarters. My lady's maid helped me. She risks everything for it." Eli stepped closer quietly. "And the man he wanted you to marry," Clara closed her eyes. 40 years my senior. Wealthy. With 2 previous wives who died of illness. But Boston whispers louder than doctors. They say he beat them. That he broke one so badly, she stopped speaking entirely. A chill swept through the room. "You ran," Eli said gently. "You did the right thing." Clara looked at him with something like gratitude. Or maybe something more fragile. "I had no other choice." The room fell into heavy silence, broken only by the fire popping in the hearth. Finally, Noah asked, "Why send the Pinkertons? Why so desperate?" Clara's lips parted, but before she could speak, Caleb interrupted from the door. "Because power-hungry men don't like losing what they own." Clara flinched, not from the words, but from how true they were. Eli looked at her again. "Then what's coming after you?" She hesitated. Then she answered with a quiet finality. "Everything my father built. Every man he pays. Every promise Silas made. It's all coming here. For me. For us." Outside, the hoofbeats faded into the open prairie. But the danger did not fade with them. It thickened, settling over the cabin like a storm cloud ready to break. Clara moved closer to the fire, warming her hands. "He will not stop, Eli. Not until I'm back under his control." Eli stepped beside her. Then we make sure he doesn't get what he wants." She looked up at him not with fear, but with the first spark of trust. But before any hope could settle, Noah stiffened again. He pushed open the door sharply and peered into the distance. "What is it?" Eli asked. Noah pointed. "Riders." Clara paled. "Pinkertons, no," Noah said. "5 men, but not Pinkertons. Their posture is wrong, their clothes, not city men." Caleb exhaled shakily. Then who Eli's voice was a quiet growl. "Silas. He wants to finish the job before the Pinkertons arrive." Clara pressed a hand to her chest, breath unsteady. Eli grabbed his rifle again. "If they lay hands on me, I disappear into a life worse than death." Clara's voice trembled as she spoke the words, and the sound of them seemed to carve the air in the small cabin. Outside, 5 riders closed in fast. Their silhouettes cut against the fading light like blades, their horses kicking up plumes of dust as they bore down on the ranch. Eli Red Elk didn't waste a heartbeat. He grabbed Clara's arm, pulled her away from the window, and spoke low but firm. "Stay behind me." Noah Gray Fox was already moving. He swung out the back door and circled toward the side of the cabin, crouched low with his rifle ready, his movements swift and silent. Caleb Turner lingered for a breath, fear warring with loyalty. Then he darted for his horse. "I'll try to mislead them," he whispered. "Buy you time." Eli gave a single nod. Caleb mounted and tore off westward. The riders outside slowed to a stop just beyond the porch. Eli moved to the window and risked a glance. Their coats were dusty, their collars high, their faces shadowed by wide-brimmed hats. Not lawmen, not cowboys either. Hired muscle, and none of them looked prepared to negotiate. The men dismounted one by one. Heavy boots hit the dirt. Clara whispered, gripping the back of his shirt. "You don't understand what these men do. They don't bring me home. They erase me. My father has a place, an institution where he sends those who disobey. A woman never comes out the same." Her breath hitched, and Eli's hands tightened on his rifle. "They won't touch you," he said. The leader of the riders stepped onto the porch. His voice boomed through the door, deep and crude. "Eli Red Elk. Silas Donnelly says you've got something that belongs to a very powerful man." Clara's fingers dug into Eli's arm. Eli opened the door but didn't step out. He stood firm in the frame, rifle lowered but ready. "This woman isn't yours to claim." "She ain't yours either," the man spat. "Not really. Paper don't mean much, especially paper signed in a frontier town. Silas says she's to come with us, and Silas is the one who's been paid." Clara stepped back into the shadows. The man smirked. "That's right. We know who she is." Eli kept his voice steady. "She's my wife." "Not for long," the leader said. "And if you fight us, you'll lose more than a bride." Noah appeared from around the corner like a ghost rifle trained on the nearest rider. 5 against 2, he said calmly. "You sure you want to find out how many of you fall before the others reach us?" The leader's jaw clenched. He hadn't expected resistance. From behind, Clara whispered urgently, "You can't shoot them. If they die here, my father will send men 10 times worse." Eli didn't answer, but he understood. They needed escape, not bloodshed. The leader took a step closer. "Last chance. Bring her out." Eli stepped fully onto the porch, meeting the man's eyes. "If you want her, you'll have to come through me." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Noah fired, not at a man, at the leader's boot splintering the porch at his feet. The riders jerked back, startled. "We're leaving," Eli said sharply. "Right now." He slammed the door shut and turned to Clara. "Get your bag." She didn't hesitate. She grabbed her things, her breath trembling. "Where will we go, North?" Eli said. "Into Lakota country. They won't follow far without a guide." Noah burst back inside through the rear door. "Horses are ready, but we need to move before they get bold." Clara's eyes darted toward the front of the cabin. "What about those men? They'll regroup," Noah said. "They'll try to corner us once they realize we're leaving." Eli grabbed his saddlebags and slung his rifle over his back. "Then we don't give them the chance." They slipped out the back door, keeping low as they crossed the fenced yard to the horses. Eli helped Clara mount his spare mare, a gentle chestnut with steady footing. He vaulted onto his own horse, a tall bay with a streak of white down its face. Clara gripped the pommel tight. "I've ridden before," she whispered almost to herself. "But not like this." "You'll learn fast," Eli said. "You won't have a choice." They kicked off at the same moment. Noah mounted his horse and took the lead. The trio galloped across the darkening plains, the wind roaring past their ears. Behind them, angry shouts echoed from the ranch as the riders realized they'd been outmaneuvered. Clara didn't look back. She stared ahead, hair whipping loose from her bonnet, her body jolting with the rhythm of the horse beneath her. Eli rode close beside her, ready to catch her if she slipped. He shouted over the wind. "Can you keep this pace?" "Yes," she shouted back, though her grip betrayed uncertainty. Night settled fast. The sky deepened into indigo stars, pricking through like scattered sparks. The prairie grass whispered beneath pounding hooves. After nearly an hour, Noah slowed and pointed toward a narrow ravine. "We cut through there. Harder trail, but it'll lose them." They entered the ravine, its walls rising like dark shoulders around them. The path tightened, forcing them to ride single file. Clara's breathing was ragged now, but she didn't complain. She held on, jaw set with determination Eli hadn't expected. When they reached a wider clearing, they slowed to catch their breath. Clara leaned forward, gripping the saddle horn. "How long until they stop chasing us?" Noah scanned the horizon. "Hard to say. They'll push far, but once the land gets rough, they'll break off." "But the Pinkertons won't," Clara whispered. Eli drew closer. "That's why we're going deeper. There's a valley ahead only my uncle and I know how to reach. We'll camp there." Clara looked between the two men. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to drag you into my father's war." Noah shook his head. "You didn't. Silas did." Eli said nothing for a long moment. But then he leaned closer. Voice quiet but clear. "You're my wife, Clara. Whatever brought you here, however we got married, your fight is mine now." Clara's breath caught in her throat. She looked away quickly, blinking hard because the weight of those words was more than she expected, more than she felt she deserved. The horses moved on deeper into the wilderness. The night air grew colder. The ravine narrowed once more, leading to a dark passage between two hills. When they emerged on the other side, Clara gasped. A hidden valley stretched before them, quiet, sheltered by ridges dotted with tall grass, and a narrow stream that glimmered like silver in the moonlight. It was peaceful, protected, alive. Eli eased his horse to a stop beside the stream. "We'll rest here, at least until dawn." Clara slid down from her saddle, landing unsteadily on her feet. Eli caught her elbow before she fell. She held his gaze for a heartbeat too long. Then Noah's voice broke the moment. "I'll take first watch." Eli nodded. "Wake me in 2 hours." Clara sank onto a smooth stone near the water shoulders, trembling with exhaustion and the weight of everything she'd fled. Eli crouched beside her. "You did well tonight." She shook her head. I barely held on. You held on, Eli said. That's what matters. Clara looked up at him, eyes reflecting the moonlight, and something deeper, fear, hope, gratitude, tangled into one. What happens now? She whispered. Eli looked toward the dark ridges surrounding them, sensing shadows watching from afar, shadows that felt older than Pinkertons or hired guns. Tomorrow, he said, we meet someone who can help us survive this. Clara straightened. Who? Eli nodded toward the far end of the valley. My uncle, he said quietly. Thomas Running Bear. Out here, the land remembers every truth a man tries to bury. Thomas Running Bear spoke that line the moment he stepped out of the shadows, and it settled over the hidden valley, like a judgment passed by the earth itself. Clara Easton froze where she sat by the narrow stream, her breath catching, as she took in the tall, broad-shouldered Lakota elder, who moved toward them with the quiet authority of someone who knew these lands far better than time itself. Eli Red Elk rose to greet him. Uncle, he said, voice dipped with respect. Thomas paused a few steps away, his hard gaze sweeping over Clara from head to toe before returning to Eli. In the moonlight, his eyes glinted with something sharp. Not hostility, not welcome. Assessment. You brought trouble with you, Thomas said simply. Noah Gray Fox stepped forward from his watch post. We didn't have a choice. Silas Donnelly sent hired riders. Pinkertons are coming. Thomas gave a long, slow exhale. Silas always was a snake in tall grass. His gaze returned to Clara. Who is she? Eli motioned for Clara to stand. She rose, legs still unsteady from fear and exhaustion, but her spine straightened with the same quiet dignity she had shown in Deadwood. She met Thomas's gaze without flinching. My name is Clara Easton, she said, Eli's wife. The word wife hung between all four of them. Even here in this hidden place it felt strange. Too new, too heavy, too real. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Your wife, he echoed to Eli. A man does not take a wife in the middle of danger unless the danger was part of the vows. It was not, Eli said. Silas pulled us both into a lie neither of us agreed to. It was not entirely a lie, Clara said softly. I did agree to the ceremony. Her voice held no shame, only truth. I needed protection. Silas offered it under false pretenses. I accepted because I had nowhere else to turn. Thomas studied her a long moment. You ran from something. Yes, Clara whispered. Something that believes it owns you. Her throat tightened. Yes. Then sit, Thomas said, gesturing toward the fire Noah had built. Tell me why the land trembles with the echo of your footsteps. Clara sat, pulling her coat tighter around her. Eli joined her, settling nearby, and Noah took up a silent guard behind them. The fire crackled quietly. Nightbirds called from the far edge of the valley. The moment felt heavy, sacred. Clara breathed in the cool air, trying to steady her thoughts. I come from Boston, she began. My father, Bartholomew Easton, owns most of the railroads that cross this country. He is a man who understands leverage and cruelty equally well. When I refused a marriage, he arranged one that would have bound me to a man twice his age. My father locked me in my room. He said I would remain there until I changed my mind. Thomas nodded, expression unchanged. A caged woman grows more dangerous than a free one. Clara blinked at that. My maid helped me escape. I reached out to Silas Donnelly because he is my mother's cousin. I believed blood meant safety. Thomas's lip curved ever so slightly. Blood often means the opposite. Clara lowered her eyes. I thought he would hide me. Instead, he married me off in a saloon. Thomas's gaze slid to Eli. And you agreed to this? Eli bristled. I didn't know who she was. Silas rigged a game to force my hand. And yet Thomas said, you protect her. There was no accusation in the words, simply curiosity. Eli held his uncle's gaze. She needed someone. Anyone. I couldn't abandon her. Thomas nodded once the smallest gesture of approval. Clara saw it. Eli felt it. She continued, my father's reach is long. When he wants something, he sends men who do not fail. If they find me, I return to a life I refused. If they take me, I may not be the same person again. The firelight flickered across Thomas's weathered face. Your fear is real, but fear does not mean weakness. Clara swallowed. I am not weak, but I am tired. Eli glanced at her. Her eyes were shadowed, and in that moment she looked less like a woman running from power and more like a woman running from herself. Thomas rose from the fire and paced a few steps, his silhouette tall against the moonlit ridges. Your father's men will come, he said. Hired riders. Pinkertons with cold eyes, men without honor. They will not hesitate to search this valley. Clara's voice trembled. Can they reach us here? No, Thomas said. Not unless someone leads them. Noah stepped closer. Silas might, if he's desperate. Thomas nodded slowly. Then we must move soon, but not tonight. The horses are tired and the moon is low. Clara exhaled shakily. Where would we go? Thomas turned toward her. There is a place deeper in Lakota country where no white man dares ride without invitation. The Pinkertons will not follow you there. But first, he looked to Eli. I must know what Clara is to you. Not what a saloon marriage made her, but what your heart says. The question charged the air. Clara's breath caught. Eli's chest tightened. Thomas continued, voice calm but firm. If she is only a burden, this becomes a rescue. If she is your wife in truth, this becomes a war. Eli stared into the fire. Thoughts tangled like smoke, pride, duty, anger, confusion, something softer he wasn't ready to name. Finally he answered. I don't know what she is to me yet, but I know I won't leave her behind. Clara's eyes glistened, catching the firelight. She looked down quickly, as if afraid he'd see the emotion there. Thomas accepted the answer with a nod. Then we protect her. For now. A rustle echoed from the ridge above them. Noah snapped his rifle up. Eli reached for his revolver. Clara froze. Thomas lifted a hand, calm. Be at ease. Another figure stepped forward into the fire's glow, a Lakota woman, hair braided, carrying a bundle of herbs and cloth. She nodded respectfully toward the group. Walks with snow, Thomas said. A healer. Clara straightened. Have you come to help? To watch walks with snow, said softly. And to decide. Clara blinked. Decide what? Whether you belong here, she said simply. Eli knew what she meant. The Lakota did not offer shelter lightly, and Clara, pale, foreign, carrying the weight of the railroad baron's name, was asking for protection that could bring danger to their people. Clara swallowed. I understand. Thomas sat again by the fire. Tonight, we rest. Tomorrow, we ask the land where to go. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, drawing closer to the warmth. Exhaustion lined her face, but for the first time she looked less alone. Across the valley, Noah settled into a watchful stance. Eli sat beside Clara, silent but solid, and Thomas Running Bear stared into the flames, seeing visions only he could read. Clara broke the silence with a quiet question. "What happens if the Pinkertons find us tomorrow?" Thomas answered without turning. "Then we move faster, and you learn to survive." And after that, she whispered. It was Eli who answered, voice low and steady. "After that, we start telling each other the truths we've been holding back." Clara looked at him. Really looked. "I am not afraid of your enemies, Clara. I am afraid of what you make me feel." Eli Red Elk said it before he understood the full weight of the confession, the words tumbling out in the dim early light of the valley. For a moment, the world stilled around him. The morning sun had only just begun to stretch across the grass, lighting the mist in gold, and Clara Easton sat beside the creek, with her knees drawn up, staring into the water, as if afraid to move. Her breath caught at his words. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough that the mist around her seemed to tighten. She didn't look at him right away. Instead, she let the words settle like dust on old furniture, delicate, dangerous, too easily disturbed. Eli cursed himself under his breath. He hadn't meant to say it like that. Not when everything between them was so fragile, so new, so complicated by danger. He stepped back, fingers curling around the edge of his belt, as if he needed something to hold on to. "Forget I said it like that," he muttered. "I just—" Clara turned toward him slowly. Her eyes, green and clear and impossibly steady, held him in place. "Don't take it back." Her voice was soft but carried something firm, something almost scared. "I don't want lies between us. Not when everything else around us already is." He sank onto the rock beside her, not too close, but not far either. "Clara, I don't even understand what I feel yet. I shouldn't have said that. But you meant it." He didn't deny it. Couldn't. The silence between them ripened into something thick, too heavy to ignore, too fragile to grasp. Finally, Clara broke it. "Eli, I've spent my life around men who use affection as a tool, a bargaining chip. My father, the man he wanted me to marry. Even Silas in his twisted, cowardly way. I don't know what to do when someone speaks honestly." Eli looked down at her hands. Small, cold, trembling in a way he hadn't noticed the night before. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. "Not feelings, not explanation, not a future. We got thrown together because a man with a greed problem rigged a deck of cards. That's all." Her laugh was small and sad. "That's not all." Before he could ask what she meant, she shifted on the rock, looking out at the valley. "Eli, last night when I thought Silas's men would take me, I was ready to run, to keep running forever. But then you said, 'Stay behind me.' And for the first time in months, I believed someone would stand between me and the world." She paused. "That frightened me more than the gunman." Eli's chest tightened. Clara continued, voice barely above a whisper. "Because if you fall, I fall." He reached out without thinking and laid his hand over hers. She stiffened in surprise but didn't pull away. Instead, she let his warmth gather around her fingers, like something she'd been deprived of for too long. "Clara," he said quietly, "I meant what I said earlier. I'm not afraid of Silas or Pinkertons or even your father. I've dealt with danger my whole life. But you—" His voice faltered. "You're different." She blinked, and the softness in her gaze nearly undid him. A rustle behind them broke the moment. Thomas Running Bear stood at the edge of the clearing, watching with the patience of a man who understood the slow unfolding of human hearts. Noah Gray Fox approached from the opposite side, scanning the valley with sharp eyes. Thomas cleared his throat. Morning has arrived, and so have decisions. Eli stood quickly, stepping back from Clara, but feeling the echo of her touch in his hand. Clara gathered herself and rose, pulling her coat around her shoulders. Noah approached with a solemn expression. Tracks. 3 men on horseback passed the North Ridge in the night. Not Silas's group. Could be scouts. Clara stiffened. Pinkertons. Maybe, Noah said. They ride like men trained to follow more than dust. They ride like hunters. Eli felt Clara tense beside him and spoke low. Scouts or not, they didn't find the valley. They will, Thomas said. Sooner or later. He walked toward the fire pit Noah had built at dawn, his stride steady. You have until sundown to rest. Then we move. Clara frowned. Move where Thomas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her the way a hawk studies a mouse in the grass, measured silent, deeper than sight. Finally, he said, You asked for truth last night. Now I give you one. Your father's reach is long, but not long enough to reach the deepest folds of this land. He glanced at Eli. But he will not stop sending men until he has you. Clara swallowed hard. I know. Thomas looked back to her. So we must decide, hide you, fight for you, or deliver you somewhere he cannot touch. Eli stiffened. Deliver her to who Thomas met his gaze. To our people. To those who live beyond Deadwood's maps. Clara blinked. Your tribe, yes, Thomas said. Lakota lands hold protections your laws do not. Noah added. Pinkertons won't follow far into territory they fear. They know better than to ride blind into land they don't understand. Clara looked between them. Would your people even want me among them? That Thomas said is what today will decide. Eli saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. Not the same fear from the ranch. Not the fear of being hunted. Something deeper. The fear of not belonging. He stepped closer without thinking. Whatever they decide, Clara, you're not alone. She met his gaze and whispered, Why? Why help me like this? You barely know me. Maybe Eli said, But I know enough. Her breath caught again. Before she could speak, Thomas lifted a bundle from beside the fire. Eat, drink, prepare for a hard ride. They obeyed, sitting in a small circle around the flames. Clara sipped water Noah handed her. Eli chewed dried meat, watching her closely. She ate little, lost in her thoughts. As the sun climbed, Thomas spoke again. While we wait, there is time to speak truths. A woman cannot survive what hunts you unless she sheds what weakens her. Clara lifted her chin. Weakness is not my problem. No, Thomas agreed. Your problem is carrying too much alone. Clara blinked, stunned by how easily he saw through her. Thomas pointed to the spot beside Eli. Sit, both of you. Speak what weighs your hearts. The land listens. Clara hesitated. Eli did too. But slowly she sat. Eli joined her. Thomas watched like a silent judge. Noah crouched nearby, listening but not intruding. Clara breathed deeply. I left my maid behind. My friend. She risked everything to help me escape. I don't know if my father punished her. I don't know if she's alive. Every time I stop running, I feel like I'm betraying her. Her voice trembled at the edges. Eli reached for her again. Slowly. She let him take her hand this time without hesitation. Then she whispered, "And the worst part is, I'm afraid I can't survive this. I'm afraid I'll become the kind of woman who breaks under pressure. The kind my father says I am." Thomas stepped closer, kneeling. He placed a hand on the ground. The land remembers every truth a man or woman tries to bury. It remembers strength and fear and everything in between. He pointed at Clara's heart. "You are stronger than you think, but you must let others stand with you." Clara's eyes shone with unshed tears. She nodded barely. Thomas shifted his gaze to Eli. "And you, your truth." Eli swallowed throat tight. "I don't know what comes next. I don't know what I feel. But I know I won't abandon her. No matter what." Thomas nodded, satisfied. Noah stood suddenly. "Riders," he said. "East Ridge." Clara stiffened. Eli's hand tightened around hers. Thomas rose calmly. "Then it is time." Clara looked between them, heart pounding. Time for what? Thomas Running Bear lifted his chin toward the west. "You think this marriage binds her to you? I can break it with a single signature." Silas Donnelly spat those words across the clearing, and the sound of them cut through the air, sharper than any knife. Clara Easton stiffened beside Eli Red Elk, her breath catching, as if someone had grabbed her by the throat. The hidden valley that had felt safe moments earlier now seemed too open, too exposed, too vulnerable. Silas sat astride a mottled gray horse flanked by 4 men who looked even rougher and angrier than the ones from the day before. Dust clung to their coats. Their hats were pulled low. Their guns were already resting near their hands, as if a fight was not only expected, but welcomed. Eli stepped forward, body angling between Clara and Silas. His hand hovered near his holster, but he didn't draw. Not yet. Not unless he had to. "Silas," Eli said, voice low and steady, "this land isn't yours. You got no business riding in here." Silas grinned. "Funny. I could say the same to her." Clara's fingers tightened around Eli's arm. She didn't hide behind him, but she didn't move ahead either. Her restraint wasn't fear. It was strategy. Clara Easton had long ago learned that revealing nothing was safer than revealing the wrong thing. Thomas Running Bear stepped out of the trees behind them, his presence like a shadow, solidifying into stone. The men on Silas's side shifted uneasily at the sight of the Lakota elder. "You tread where you are not welcome," Thomas said calmly. "Leave." Silas smiled as if he'd been handed a game he'd already mastered. "I go where the money goes. And the money," he pointed at Clara, "is sitting in your valley." Clara flinched. Eli felt it even though her face stayed perfectly still. Noah Gray Fox moved up beside Thomas' rifle, raised casually, but not threateningly. Just enough to signal that if a fight started, bullets would fly fast. Silas clicked his tongue. Now. No need for theatrics. I came with an offer." He leaned forward in the saddle, eyes gleaming. "Give me Clara. No shooting, no chasing, no trouble." Eli's temper sparked. "What makes you think that's even a possibility?" Silas chuckled. "Because I make it a possibility. You think you're married to her." He leaned down and grabbed a folded paper from his saddlebag, waving it above his head. "This says otherwise. This declares the marriage invalid. Null. Meaningless." Eli didn't reach for it, but his jaw clenched. "That's not signed by her. That's not signed by me. That's not signed by a judge in Deadwood. Oh, you sweet summer calf, Silas said with a mocking laugh. A railroad baron doesn't need a local judge. Clara's voice cut through the tension. Silas, you have no authority to touch me, and you know it. He turned his grin on her. Authority, no, but I have money, and your father's instructions. Clara's face went pale, but steady. You promised to hide me. Silas shrugged. Plans change. People change. My cousin, your mother's bloodline means nothing when your father waves enough gold in my face. Her breath hitched. You betrayed me. No, Silas said, pointing at her. You betrayed him. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Eli stepped forward, rage simmering just beneath his calm voice. The girl said no. That's the end of the story. Silas's eyes lit with cruelty. Pretty sure it's just the beginning. He lifted his hand. His 4 hired men spread out horses, snorting boots, scraping the ground. They didn't draw, but they didn't need to. The valley was tense enough that one wrong motion would turn everything into gunfire and blood. Thomas stepped forward, placing himself beside Eli. You will not take her. Silas sneered. I'll do whatever I'm paid to do. And I suppose her father paid you well, Thomas said. Silas tapped the paper in his hand. Half now, half when she's handed over. Clara stood straighter. I am not property. Silas laughed as if she'd told a joke. You are whatever the powerful say you are. And right now they say you're a runaway. Eli's patience snapped. You're lying, he growled. You don't have the power to annul a marriage. You don't have the right to touch her. Pinkertons or no Pinkertons? Silas cut him off. Pinkertons are already halfway here. They'll validate it. They'll take her. And they'll leave you bleeding in the dirt if you interfere. Eli's hand twitched near his holster. Thomas's arm shot out, stopping him. Now the valley's silence burned. Clara stepped around Eli and faced Silas head-on. You don't know as much as you think you do. Silas raised an eyebrow. Oh, what's that? She stepped closer. My father is not trying to annul the marriage. Silas blinked. Clara's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. He's trying to bury it. Silas's cocky grin faltered for the first time. See, Silas. Clara continued, my father doesn't want paperwork. He wants silence. He wants me dragged home quietly. He doesn't want the newspapers to catch wind of a scandal. He wants me unseen. She moved even closer, eyes blazing with cold fury. He wants witnesses eliminated. Silas suddenly swallowed, throat bobbing. Eli stared at her, seeing a different Clara than he had known before, sharp, fearless revelation burning in her bones. Thomas's voice vibrated in the air. You rode here thinking you controlled this story, but the story is bigger than you. Silas's men shifted nervously. Noah raised his rifle just a hair higher. You should rethink who you ride with. Silas tried to regain his confidence. I don't ride with Pinkertons. I don't deal with murder. Clara stepped back, letting her words land like stones. You already have. Silas blanched. Eli stepped in front of Clara again, voice quiet and deadly. You're done here, Silas. Silas hesitated. His gaze darted around to the weapons pointed at him, to Clara's ice-sharp stare, to Eli's unmoving stance, to the sacred land around him, where he held no power and no rights. For the first time in his smug, scheming life, Silas Donnelly looked afraid. Finally, he jerked his horse around. This ain't over, he snarled. Noah sighed. It usually is. Silas snapped his reins, and his men followed, galloping out of the valley like frightened cattle bolting from a wolf. The moment their hoofbeats faded, Clara's strength drained. She lowered herself to the ground, breathing hard. Eli dropped to one knee beside her. "Hey, look at me." Clara lifted her gaze, eyes shimmering. "You were fearless," he said. "I was terrified," she whispered. "Doesn't change what you did." Noah approached, scanning the horizon. "They'll be back with more men. Or worse, Pinkertons." Thomas nodded solemnly. "Our time here is finished. Tonight we rest. At dawn, we return to Deadwood." Clara froze. Return. With danger waiting, Thomas looked at her with old, steady eyes. The town must choose its side. And silence is as dangerous as bullets. Eli took her hand without hesitation. Clara let him. Tomorrow they would face Deadwood, not as strangers thrown together, but as people with shared enemies, shared danger, and a bond neither fully understood yet. "Home is not safe, but running will kill us slowly." Clara Easton said it softly, almost to herself, as the sun climbed over the ridge and cast long shadows across the hidden valley. Eli read. Elk felt the truth of those words in his bones. Running had bought them time, not safety, and Deadwood, for all its sharp edges and hard stairs, was still the only place where decisions could be made out in the open. So at dawn they rode back. The morning air was cold enough to sting, the kind that woke a person fully, whether they wanted it or not. Clara rode behind Eli, her posture straighter than the woman who had fled through the darkness the night before. Something had shifted, in her fear still lived beneath her ribs, but purpose sat beside it now. She held the reins with more confidence, guided the mare with steadier hands. Noah Gray Fox led the way down the narrow trail, eyes sharp as he tracked every movement in the hills. Thomas Running Bear followed behind, a silent guardian, with a presence as weighty as the land itself. Eli rode beside Clara, his horse pressed close to hers, ready to catch her if she faltered. Clara had not spoken much since Silas's retreat. She didn't need to. The weight of what had happened, the betrayal, the confrontation, the threat of Pinkertons settled into the lines of her face. She glanced at Eli now. "Do you think Silas reached town before us?" "Probably," Eli said. "He'll be stirring the pot." "And the Pinkertons." "They're coming," Noah called from the front. "I saw the dust trail. A large group." Clara's knuckles whitened around the reins. "Don't," Eli murmured, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Don't let them take your peace before they even arrive." She exhaled shakily. "I'm trying." He leaned slightly toward her. "You're doing more than trying." And she was. More than she realized. As they wound down the last slope toward the Deadwood Road, Clara straightened and lifted her chin. Dust rose in the distance, miners' tents sprawled beyond the bend, and the wooden signs of the settlement flickered in the morning light. When they reached the outskirts of town, people stared. Some paused mid-step, mouths half open. Others leaned out of saloon doors or halted in the middle of hitching a horse. Clara felt every stare like a pin against her skin. Eli moved his horse even closer to hers. "Stay near me." "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. Noah slowed until he rode beside them. Word spread quick. "Everyone knows something's happening." Clara swallowed hard. They reached the main street, a rutted path lined with saloons, shops, a small church, and wooden walkways where townsfolk gathered like ravens around fresh scraps. The whispers started before Clara even dismounted. "That's her, the runaway. Silas said she's worth a fortune. Heard the Pinkertons are after her. What's Red Elk thinking, bringing trouble into Deadwood?" Eli ignored them, sliding off his horse and offering Clara his hand. She hesitated only a moment before taking it. The contact steadied her. When her boots touched the ground, the whispers thickened. Thomas Running Bear dismounted with slow, deliberate calm, and the crowd instinctively stepped back. Lakota warriors rarely walked into Deadwood unless there was a reason. Martha Green pushed through the crowd, then her apron still streaked with flour, and her hair pinned in its usual hurried twist. "Good Lord above," she said, looking Clara over with a sharp eye. "You look like you've lived a year and a night." Clara almost laughed. "It feels like it." "Come on," Martha said. "Let's get you inside before these vultures peck you clean." But Clara didn't move. Instead, she looked around the street, breathing deeply, grounding herself in the place she'd been so desperate to avoid. "No," she said softly. "I need people to see I'm not hiding." Martha's brow lifted. "You sure you're not too tired to stand tall?" "I'm tired," Clara admitted. "But I'm still standing." Eli felt something proud twist in his chest. The sheriff approached, then Sheriff Buckner, tall and weather-worn hat pulled low. He stopped a few feet away, eyes dragging across the group. "Heard trouble found you," Eli Buckner said. "Trouble found," Clara Eli corrected. "Silas brought men to my ranch. They weren't law, they were hired hands." Buckner's jaw tightened. "That right," Clara stepped forward. "Sheriff, Silas lies. He's working with my father's men. He's trying to deliver me into their hands, against my will." Buckner took off his hat. "Miss Easton, I heard you were running from family matters back east, but Pinkertons aren't typically sent for domestic disagreements." Clara held his gaze. "This isn't domestic. This is control." Martha stepped up behind Clara. "Sheriff, you know Silas Donnelly's never been trustworthy a day in his life." Noah nodded. "He's stirring trouble in town, spreading stories." "And Pinkertons?" Buckner asked. "Half a day out," Noah answered. The sheriff rubbed his chin. "Town ain't prepared for a brawl between a baron's men and half its own citizens. Tempers are up. Folks are picking sides." Clara flinched. "Sides." Buckner gestured down the street. Small groups of townsfolk stood clustered, whispering and staring. But Clara noticed something she hadn't expected. Some faces showed curiosity, some distrust, but others, sympathy. "She's running from something," a blacksmith muttered. "Ain't right to drag her back," a woman whispered to her friend. Clara blinked. "People?" "Support me," Martha snorted. "Not everyone's on the railroad's payroll, dear," Thomas added quietly. "When people have been stepped on long enough, they know the sound of another boot coming for them." Eli looked at Clara. "This town understands oppression more than you think." For the first time since stepping into Deadwood, Clara let herself breathe. But the relief was brief, because a man burst from the telegraph office waving a paper and shouting, "Message from the East, urgent." Addressed to Sheriff Buckner, the sheriff took it, opened it, and read aloud, arriving June 10th. "Nth, Bartholomew Easton." Clara's breath froze. "Your father's comin'," the sheriff said quietly. The news hit the street like a thrown lantern. People murmured, argued, backed away, or stepped closer. Eli reached for Clara's hand again. She didn't pull away. Martha whispered, "Lord, help us all." Clara felt her knees weaken, not from fear of her father, but from the reality that her choices had finally collided with his ruthlessly planned future. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Eli held her hand firmly. "We don't run, not again." Noah's expression hardened. Town needs to know the truth before Easton twists it. Thomas nodded. And Clara must not hide from the people who may choose to defend her. Clara swallowed. Defend me, Eli's voice was quiet but strong. You'd be surprised who stands up to tyranny when given the chance. A heavy stillness followed. Then Clara straightened, shoulders back, chin lifted against the rising storm. I'll tell them everything, she said. Before my father arrives. Before the Pinkertons twist the story. Martha squeezed her arm. Then you speak tonight. Before sundown. Eli looked at Clara with something fierce and unshakable. We stand with you. She looked at him, really looked, and whispered, I know. And as the townsfolk closed in with questions and curiosity, Clara took her first step into the battle for her own freedom. If Easton comes for blood, he will not spill it without meeting ours. Sheriff Buckner spoke the words just as the sun dipped below the rooftops of Deadwood, staining the sky red like a warning. And those words, gritty, grim, spoken by a man who'd buried more than a few souls, spread through the town, faster than liquor in a cracked glass. Clara Easton stood at the center of the crowd forming in front of the sheriff's office. Lanterns swung overhead. Boots shuffled on hard-packed dirt. Horses snorted at the hitching posts. The townsfolk of Deadwood, miners, shopkeepers, gamblers, women with children on their hips. Men with dust ground into their skin had gathered because they wanted answers. And Clara knew she had to give them. Eli Red Elk stood beside her, silent but steady, his presence anchoring her in place. Noah Gray Fox leaned against a post nearby, keeping watch. Thomas Running Bear remained half in shadow at the edge of the crowd, unreadable but protective. Martha Green stood on Clara's other side, hands on her hips, ready to swat any fool who dared speak out of turn. It was Clara's moment. Her voice had to reach them before her father's men did. Sheriff Buckner raised a hand to quiet the murmurs. Folks, he called out, you've heard bits and pieces, but now you'll hear it straight from the woman at the center of it all. Clara Easton. Dozens of eyes swung toward her. Curiosity, sympathy, skepticism, wariness. Clara drew in a slow breath, feeling it scrape through her ribs. She stepped forward. My father is Bartholomew Easton, she began. The name alone drew mutters. Even out here, people knew the power behind that surname. He wants me home not because he cares, but because he needs me to secure a business alliance. I ran because the man he chose for me has a history of cruelty. Her voice wavered, but she didn't break. Bartholomew Easton locked me in my room for refusing the engagement. I escaped with help. I reached out to Silas Donnelly, my late mother's cousin, because I believed he would protect me. A woman in the crowd scoffed. Silas don't protect anyone but himself. That is true, Clara said, surprising many with her bluntness. Silas lied to me, lied to Eli, and lied to the entire town. She glanced toward Eli, and something in her gaze softened. He tricked me into a marriage I wasn't ready for, thinking he could deliver me to my father like a parcel. But Eli Red Elk did not know any of this. He didn't know who I was. And yet, she swallowed. He protected me. Eli looked down, jaw tight, uncomfortable with praise. But the crowd noticed his stillness, his steadiness. A murmur of approval rippled through them. Clara continued louder now. Pinkerton agents are coming. My father is coming. They will say I was kidnapped. They will say Deadwood harbored a criminal. They will try to twist the truth into a weapon. The townspeople exchanged uneasy looks. Children clung to parents. Men straightened awkwardly, unsure how to respond. The idea of going against one of the richest men in the nation. Martha placed a firm hand on Clara's back. Tell them what happens if the railroad wins. Clara breathed out. If my father controls this territory, he will claim land, water, and lives. He will build whatever he wants, wherever he wants, and he will tear down anyone who stands in his path. A miner shouted. He's been buying claims all year. My cousin lost his whole lot. A shopkeeper added. He choked half the merchants in Cheyenne. Railroad rates tripled. Clara raised her voice over them. Deadwood can decide whether to hand me over or stand with me. Silence fell over the street. Then the blacksmith, Caleb Turner, stepped forward, wiping soot from his forehead. I'll be damned if I let a railroad king tell us how to live. A few men nodded. Sheriff Buckner crossed his arms. Clara speaks truth. Easton built his fortune by running over folks smaller than him. This town stood proud, without bowing to big Eastern money. The question is simple: do we hand her over and pretend it ends there, or do we draw a line? A woman holding a toddler said, If we give Clara up, he'll roll right over us next. An old trapper spat on the ground. Bartholomew Easton ain't welcome here. Voices rose. Not all supportive, but enough to show the town was shifting. Clara felt her throat tighten. She had expected anger, distrust. But what she saw instead was something that made her chest ache. Solidarity. Eli finally stepped forward. You all know me. I've lived beside you, worked with you, helped build this town. I didn't choose this fight, but I'll finish it if I have to. And I won't let anyone touch my wife. His voice softened at the end, but the crowd didn't miss the way Clara's breath caught or how she looked at him. A man shouted, We stand with Eli. Another yelled, We stand with Clara. Sheriff Buckner raised both hands. Then we prepare. Pinkertons will be here by morning. Easton, soon after. Noah stepped forward. We need barricades, watch patrols, and trusted eyes on every road into town. Thomas Running Bear added, and knowledge. The enemy cannot win if we understand their steps before they make them. The townsfolk broke into murmured planning. Who would guard where? Who had weapons? Who would support the sheriff? Who would help Clara hide if things went wrong? People moved around her now. Not past her. Not against her. With her. Clara's knees weakened from the emotional weight of it all. She almost swayed until a warm hand caught her elbow. Eli. You spoke well, he murmured. She let out a shaky breath. I thought I would faint. You didn't. She smiled faintly. You didn't either. His lips curved. I don't faint. Martha huffed beside them. Neither of you are allowed to faint. Not until this mess is settled. Clara laughed, then real laughter, small and trembling but genuine. And for the first time since her escape from Boston, she felt something unexpected and precious. Hope. But as the crowd dispersed to prepare for what was coming, Clara spotted movement at the far end of the road, dust rising, shadows flickering, riders approaching slowly. Not Pinkertons, not her father, but the judge, the bank owner, a few men who had always sided with money over morality, whispering quietly, watching her with narrow, calculating eyes. Eli followed her gaze and stiffened. Not everyone's with us. Clara nodded. I know. Can you handle that? He asked. I must, she whispered. I have run enough for 10 lifetimes. The next step I take will be forward. Clara whispered those words into the dusk as she stood on the ridge above Deadwood, the town's lanterns flickering beneath her like scattered stars. The night air carried wood smoke and tension, the kind that sat heavy on a person's shoulders. She wrapped her coat tighter, not from the cold, but from the sheer weight of what tomorrow promised. Behind her, Eli Red Elk approached quietly. He didn't touch her, didn't speak at first. He simply stood beside her, looking at the town the same way she did, like it was both salvation and danger, both refuge and battleground. "You've been quiet," he said at last. Clara managed a small smile. "Thinking. About tomorrow. About everything." He nodded. The silence between them settled again, familiar now, comfortable even in its heaviness. The sheriff's meeting earlier had lasted hours. Plans made, patrols assigned, warnings given. Pinkertons would arrive at dawn, perhaps sooner. Bartholomew Easton's private train was not far behind. The judge had already hinted he might be loyal to the highest bidder. And Silas. He'd vanished, which meant trouble was already brewing in the shadows. Clara exhaled another shaky breath. "Eli, there's something I've been trying to decide." Eli turned toward her. "What is it?" She hesitated. The words stuck in her throat. For weeks she had been silent out of necessity, fear of being caught, fear of being controlled, fear of being punished. But now the silence was different. It felt like the last wall between her past and her future. "I spent so long being told where to go, who to speak to, how to breathe," she said. "Running became the only thing I knew. Running from my father. Running from his world. Running from a life that never belonged to me." Her voice thinned. "But if I run again now, I lose everything I've fought for, including myself." Eli watched her for a long moment, eyes softening. "You're thinking about leaving." Clara lowered her gaze. "I'm thinking about whether I have the right to stay." "You do." "Do I look what's happening, Eli? People are preparing to fight because of me. Your land, your life, your friends, they're all being pulled into my storm. It's our storm now." Clara closed her eyes, the words hitting deeper than he could know. "You say that so easily. It's the truth." She opened her eyes, meeting his. "Are you sure you understand what standing with me means? Pinkertons do not negotiate. And my father, he destroys anyone who gets in his way." Eli stepped closer, voice quiet but unflinching. "He's not the first powerful man I've gone up against." A soft laugh slipped from her throat. "You say it like you've fought giants." "I have," Eli said. "Just not the kind that wear fancy suits." Clara blinked. "You mean the people in town?" "And the people outside it," he added. "White men who don't want a Lakota rancher trading with them. Lakota warriors who mistrusted me for having a white father. Folks who ridiculed my mother for marrying outside the tribe. I've stood between worlds my whole life." He touched her elbow gently, grounding her. "Standing with you isn't harder. It's just clearer." Clara swallowed hard. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he said simply. She broke. Not in tears, not in despair, but in a soft, quiet unraveling of the fear she'd carried like armor. She turned away from the town and looked up at Eli, her eyes shining. "I don't want to run anymore." Eli's chest tightened. "Then stay. You're not obligated to keep me," she said. "The marriage, it wasn't real in the way it should have been. It's real enough that I made a vow. And if you regret that vow, I don't." The wind rustled the grass around them. An owl called from somewhere in the pines. The world felt strangely still, as if holding its breath. Clara stepped closer. "Eli, I don't know what this is between us. I don't know what it becomes after tomorrow, but I know this every step I take with you feels like mine, not my father's, not Silas's, not the railroad's. Mine. His heartbeat kicked hard against his ribs. Before he could speak, she added quietly, "And that scares me, because I don't want to lose that feeling." Eli cupped her cheek lightly. "You won't." She leaned into his touch. The moment stretched until the night itself seemed to blur around them. Finally, she whispered, "If you want me to stay, Eli, truly stay, I will." Fire sparked inside him, warm, fierce, protective. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not because of danger, not because of vows. Because when I look at you, I see a woman who fights harder than anyone I've ever known. And I want to see where that leads." Clara's breath hitched. "I don't know if I'm ready for what that means." "Neither am I," he admitted. "But we'll figure it out." Her hand trembled as it lifted and touched his chest right over his heart. "I'm afraid," she whispered. "So am I," Eli said. "But I'd rather face this afraid with you than brave without you." She laughed softly, a tear slipping free. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because it makes staying too easy." Eli leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips touched gentle at first, then deeper, pulled by every unspoken thing between them. Clara grabbed his shirt, steadying herself. Eli's hand moved to her waist, anchoring her against him. The kiss was raw and unexpected and necessary, like breath after drowning. When they finally parted, Clara pressed her forehead to his. "If they ask me tomorrow whether I stand with you, I'll say yes." He smiled faintly. "Good." But she added, breathless, "I want to be sure of something. Anything. You won't run either." He lifted her chin. "Clara, I've been running from my own heart for years. You stopped that. I'm not going anywhere." She kissed him again, brief trembling, but it carried the weight of a woman choosing her own life for the first time. Below them, Deadwood buzzed with preparations, unaware of the shift that had just occurred on the ridge. When Clara finally stepped back, she said, "Let's go down. There's planning left to do," Eli nodded. "And danger. And choices," she added. "And hope," he countered. They walked down together side by side, uncertain, terrified, committed, ready. Men like your father don't come west seeking justice. They come seeking ownership. Sheriff Buckner spoke those words as dawn broke over Deadwood, turning the sky a pale gold that did nothing to warm the cold knot inside Clara Easton's stomach. She stood in front of the sheriff's office with Eli Red Elk beside her, Noah Gray Fox on her other side, and Thomas Running Bear behind them, like a fortress made of flesh and bone. The Pinkertons arrived first. Their horses thundered down the road in formation, 12 men in black dusters, polished boots, and cold, expressionless faces. They rode like machines, not men. Their leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar running from his left ear to his jaw, dismounted and approached the sheriff with an air of absolute authority. "Sheriff Buckner," he said. "Agent Graves." He removed his hat, but not out of respect, more like formality required by law. "We're here for Miss Clara Easton." Buckner crossed his arms. "She's not going anywhere without a hearing." Agent Graves smiled coldly. "This is not a matter for a local sheriff. This is a matter of interstate recovery. The young lady is a ward of her father. Her removal from Boston constitutes unlawful flight and stop." Clara stepped forward, surprising everyone, including herself. Her voice didn't tremble. It didn't rise. It simply cut through the morning like a blade dipped in honesty. I am not a ward. I am not a runaway under law. I am a grown woman, and I am married. Agent Graves blinked. Married, yes, Clara said, to Eli Red Elk. The townspeople who had gathered, miners, merchants, ranchers, their children leaned in as if witnessing the start of something dangerous and holy. Agent Graves narrowed his eyes. We have documentation declaring that union invalid. Documentation forged by my father, Clara said. Not by a court. That does not change the fact that he demands your return. Clara lifted her chin. I am not his property. Graves's eyes hardened. Your father believes otherwise, and he will be here shortly to clarify the law. Clara's breath hitched. She felt Eli step closer, not touching her, but enough that the space between them hummed with solidarity. Sheriff Buckner scowled. This is Deadwood, not Boston. Folks out here choose for themselves. We will, Raves answered once Mr. Easton arrives. As if summoned by the words, the ground began to rumble. A locomotive's whistle pierced the morning air. People turned as a private train, sleek, dark, and out of place in this rough land, rolled into the small Deadwood station. The engine gleamed like polished onyx. It hissed angrily as it slowed. Clara felt her lungs shrink. He had come. Bartholomew Easton. Her father. The door to the private car opened, and a tall, impeccably dressed man stepped onto the platform. His suit was pressed despite the journey. His hat rested at the perfect angle. His face, hard handsome in a ruthless way, was carved from stone. His eyes found Clara instantly, and everything inside her went cold. Her father strode toward them with the confidence of a king returning to reclaim stolen land. His entourage, 2 more Pinkertons and a lawyer, followed like shadows. When he stopped 5 feet from Clara, he didn't look at Eli or the sheriff or the townsfolk. Only her. Clara. His voice was smooth, too smooth. You look exhausted. She didn't answer. Bartholomew Easton's smile didn't reach his eyes. You've caused me a great deal of trouble. Eli stepped forward. She's not going with you. Easton didn't even glance at him. Son, I'll speak to you when spoken to. Eli's jaw tightened, but Clara caught his wrist, lightly grounding him. She stepped forward instead. I'm not leaving with you, she said softly. Her father's face twitched almost imperceptibly. You are confused. I'm not. You are overwhelmed. No. Clara. His voice dropped to a dangerous calm. You belong at home. I belong where I decide, she said, her voice trembling at the edges, but steady at the core. Deadwood fell silent. Easton finally looked at Eli, and the disdain was unmistakable. This rancher. This half-breed. His contempt dripped like poison. This is the reason you ran. Clara inhaled sharply. Outrage flooded Eli's face. Noah stiffened. Thomas Running Bear stepped closer, his presence suddenly thunderous. You don't speak to him that way, Clara said sharply. Bartholomew's brow lifted. You defend him, a man of no standing, no fortune, no enough. Clara stepped so close her father had no choice but to look at her fully. You don't get to belittle the man who saved my life. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her father's jaw flexed. Clara, you will come home. Now. Before this becomes ugly. It already is ugly, she said. And I won't go. Easton turned to Agent Graves. Take her. But the sheriff stepped between them. Hold on. The lady's made her statement. Easton sneered. I don't care what she says. She is my daughter. And she is my wife, Eli said, stepping forward. For the first time, Bartholomew Easton's facade cracked. Graves turned sharply. Her marriage is disputed. Legally, you can dispute the sky is blue, Eli said, but it won't change the truth. Clara reached for Eli's hand. She didn't even realize she'd done it until her father's face twisted with fury. You filthy Thomas Running Bear stepped forward. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. Speak, Thomas said quietly, and choose your words with care. Easton swallowed whatever insult had been rising, but his fury remained simmering like a volcano beneath polished marble. My daughter, he said, forcing calm, will return to Boston. I'm done entertaining this fantasy. Clara took a breath. And then she did something no one expected, not even Eli. She stepped in front of him. No, she said. I choose my life, not yours. Her father's voice dropped to a whisper. You will regret this. Clara's voice dropped to match it. I already regret every year I spent letting you decide who I was. Easton's eyes went cold, shuddered, cruel. Very well, he said. If you will not come willingly, he nodded at Graves. Take her. Pinkerton surged forward. Guns cocked. Townfolk shouted. Eli drew. Noah raised his rifle. The sheriff cursed and reached for his weapon. Thomas moved with the speed of a predator ready to defend its den. And Clara. Clara felt everything freeze. All of Deadwood hung on the edge of violence, until a single voice split the chaos. Stop. It was Clara's. Not pleading. Commanding. She stepped between the guns, between her father, between Eli, between the law and the lawless. And she said with a steadiness she had never known before, if you take me by force, you will make Deadwood your enemy. The town quieted. Pinkertons hesitated, and her father, for the first time, showed a flicker of doubt. Clara breathed in, breathed out. Let us settle this in court, she said. Today, publicly, before the people of Deadwood. Her father blinked. Court. Yes, she said. With witnesses, with truth, with law. Bartholomew Easton's smile returned, but it wasn't victory. It was calculation. As you wish, he said. Clara's hand tightened around Eli's. Tomorrow would be deadly. If she lost, she belonged to her father. If she won, she would finally belong to herself. Truth is a blade, Clara. Sharp enough to free you, sharp enough to cut you. Thomas Running Bear said it as they stood outside the Deadwood courthouse, a squat building of rough-hewn timber leaning slightly to one side as if years of disputes had weighed it down. Morning sun poured across the street, glinting off the badges of Pinkertons stationed near the entrance, off the nervous sweat on townsfolk gathering for the spectacle, off the polished boots of Bartholomew Easton as he stepped confidently inside. Clara Easton stood completely still. Her palms were cold. Her heartbeat thundered. But her spine stayed straight, her breath even, her chin lifted in resolve that had not existed 2 months ago. Eli Red Elk stood beside her, silent and steady. He touched her elbow lightly. You ready? She whispered. But I'm still going in. That earned a faint, fleeting smile from him. Good. Martha Green bustled close behind, whispering rapid encouragement. You speak clearly, you keep your head high, and you don't let that judge bully you. And if your father tries to interrupt, I'll... Martha Noah Gray Fox murmured no threats of violence in front of the courthouse. Martha sniffed. Fine. I'll keep them in my thoughts then. Noah hid a grin. Clara drew one last breath and walked into the courthouse. Inside, benches were already full. Townspeople packed shoulder to shoulder. Miners, mothers, merchants, ranch hands. Not here for entertainment. Here to witness truth they had been denied for too long. Judge Mercer, old stern eyes sunken with exhaustion, stood at the front. He watched Clara with something unreadable, something flickering behind his stone face. Aware of the Easton fortune. Aware of the pressure. Aware of Deadwood watching. Bartholomew Easton stood to the right, flanked by his lawyer and 3 Pinkertons. When he looked at Clara, it was with the faint, indulgent smile of a man who believed he had already won. Clara forced her steps forward, each one steadier than the last. Eli stood behind her with Thomas and Noah, an unspoken wall of protection. Judge Mercer cleared his throat. We are here to address the matter of Clara Easton's legal standing and the legitimacy of her marriage to Eli Red Elk. His tired gaze swept the room. We will hear statements, and we will do so without outbursts or I clear the room. He looked first at Clara's father. Mr. Easton, your claim. Bartholomew Easton buttoned his coat with deliberate calm. My daughter is 21, legally under my care by contract and by financial dependency. She fled Boston under manipulation and duress orchestrated by Silas Donnelly, a known fraud. Clara stiffened. Easton continued, voice steady as a hammer striking steel. She was coerced into a sham marriage for purposes of protection. The ceremony was not binding. No license was filed. No witnesses valid by jurisdiction. And the groom, he let the insult drip, is not a legal citizen under federal law. Eli's jaw tightened, but Thomas squeezed his shoulder lightly. Hold. Clara stepped forward. Judge Mercer, may I respond? The judge nodded. Clara faced the room, her voice low but clear. I was not coerced by Eli. I asked him for protection because Silas tricked us both. The marriage was real. The vows were mine. Easton sneered. Vows spoken under intoxication and fear cannot hold legal weight. Clara felt heat flood her face, but not shame. Anger. I was not intoxicated, she said firmly. Silas lied. He forced Eli's hand in a card game. He used my desperation to bind me to a marriage neither of us expected. Murmurs rose. The judge banged his gavel. Order. Bartholomew Easton nodded to his lawyer. We present Exhibit A. The lawyer handed the judge a sheaf of papers. Signed testimony from Silas Donnelly stating the marriage was invalid and performed under duress. Clara felt everything inside her tighten. Silas had signed it. Of course he had. Judge Mercer scanned the document, brow furrowing. And where is Mr. Donnelly now? Missing, Easton said smoothly. Fled town after forging a union that has brought danger to Deadwood. He anticipates the consequences. Clara whispered. He anticipates something, but not justice. The judge sighed. Miss Easton, do you have evidence supporting your claims? Clara's mouth went dry. Eli stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on her back. She has testimony. Judge Mercer peered over his spectacles. Meaning Eli spoke clearly. Meaning I saw Silas rig the game. Meaning he cornered her. Meaning he knew who she was and what he could gain. Easton scoffed. A rancher's word against mine, Judge, be serious. The crowd bristled. Several miners muttered curses under their breath. Thomas Running Bear stepped forward, then his presence quiet, but powerful. I add my words. The woman spoke truth. She seeks freedom, not advantage. Easton's lip curled. Native testimony is not admissible. The room erupted in outrage. Judge Martha roared over the noise. Are you about to stand there and let him spit on half the town? Judge Mercer slammed his gavel. Enough. Silence dropped like a stone. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. The question is simple. Miss Easton, how do you wish to annul this marriage? Clara's breath stopped. Everyone waited. Even her father. Especially Eli. She turned to face Eli fully. And when she took his hand in front of the entire town, her father's face twisted as if he'd been struck. No, she said. I do not wish to annul it. Eli's breath caught in his throat. Bartholomew Easton's fist clenched. Clara, stop this nonsense. She let go of Eli's hand long enough to face her father directly. I choose my life, she said quietly, not yours. Judge Mercer leaned forward. Miss Easton, understand what this choice means. If you remain married, you are beyond your father's legal control. If this marriage is legitimate. Clara nodded. And if I rule in your father's favor, the judge continued, you return to Boston immediately under Pinkerton escort. Your life becomes his again. Her pulse thudded wildly, but her voice stayed steady. I understand. The judge exhaled. Then I must ask one more time, under oath. Do you consider this marriage valid? Clara closed her eyes. She remembered Eli's quiet steadiness, his promise not to abandon her, their kiss on the ridge, his hand reaching for hers even now. She opened her eyes. Yes, she said. It is valid. Easton's hand slammed against the table. Judge, you cannot accept that answer. She is delusional. Clara turned toward him, no fear left in her. I am not delusional, she said. I am free. The judge weighed her words, weighed the room, weighed the entire town's breath. Then he sighed heavily. I will issue my judgment at dusk. Dusk. A deadline, a warning, a promise. Pinkerton stiffened. Townsfolk murmured. Eli squeezed Clara's hand. Bartholomew Easton's eyes burned with fury. Clara stood taller than she ever had, because she knew what came next. Dusk was not the end. Freedom asks a price, Clara, and today it asks you to stand even when everything tries to pull you to your knees. Martha Green whispered those words as the sun crawled down the sky, burning amber across Deadwood and casting long, trembling shadows over the courthouse. The entire town held its breath waiting for Judge Mercer's verdict. But Judge Mercer wasn't the danger, not really. The danger simmered behind the buildings in the alleyways, in the uneasy murmur of horses and the metallic click of guns being checked. Pinkertons had taken positions around the street. Bartholomew Easton's men had doubled. Silas had resurfaced somewhere stirring poison. Inside Clara Easton's chest, her heart hammered like a creature trying to escape, not because she was afraid of the verdict, but because she had just learned something new. Something that could shatter everything she had fought for since the day she fled Boston. Silas had talked, not to her, not to Eli, to Noah Gray Fox, and the truth Noah carried burned like a fuse ready to meet powder. Clara paced behind the courthouse, away from curious eyes. Eli stood near her arms, crossed, watching every quiver in her hands. Thomas Running Bear stood by the back door, quiet, carved out of stone and patience. Noah was the only one who had tuned in close, voice low. Clara, he said gently, you need to breathe. I can't, she whispered, pressing her fists against her temples. I can't breathe until I know if it's true. Eli stepped toward her. Whatever Silas told Noah, we handle it. Together. Clara's chest tightened. Eli, if it's true, everything changes. Eli didn't flinch. Then we change with it. Clara's eyes stung. You don't understand. If the marriage was forged with false intent, if Silas planned it to manipulate both of us, then my father might use that to claim the marriage was built on unlawful grounds. He could say neither of us consented freely. Thomas spoke then, voice deep. Consent is not a paper. It is a truth spoken from the heart. Clara turned away. My father won't see it that way. He doesn't get to decide, Eli said. A crash erupted at the far end of the alley. Everyone froze. Noah drew his rifle instantly. Eli's hand went to his holster. Clara stiffened, breath caught behind her teeth. Footsteps approached, 2 sets, heavy, hurried, scraping gravel. Caleb Turner appeared first, panting, sweat streaking his face. Behind him came a young miner with soot smeared across his shirt. Miss Easton! Caleb gasped. Trouble. Big trouble. Eli stepped forward. Slow down. What happened? The young miner swallowed hard. The judge. They tried to bribe him. Clara's heart seized. Who your father, Caleb said. Or his men. They cornered Judge Mercer in the telegraph office. Offered him money. A lot of it. And when he refused, they threatened him. Clara felt her knees buckle. Eli caught her before she fell. Are you sure? He demanded, voice taut with fury. They said if he didn't rule for Easton by dusk, the miner whispered they'd make sure he never ruled again. Thomas's mouth tightened. A warning. More than a warning, Caleb said. Judge Mercer's gone. Disappeared. Folks say Pinkertons moved him somewhere secret. Clara pressed a hand to her mouth. No. No, he wouldn't run. He wouldn't abandon the town. He didn't run, Caleb said. He was taken. The world tilted around Clara. Thomas stepped close. Your father grows desperate. He knows he is losing. Eli's jaw went rigid, which means he'll strike hard before sundown. As if summoned by the words, a distant whistle screamed through the air, sharp, metallic, piercing, enough to slice through bone. Clara's entire body tensed. That signal, that's the Pinkertons' call. Noah cursed under his breath. They're mobilizing. Thomas nodded grimly. This is no longer a legal dispute. Easton chooses force. Clara stared at the horizon where the sun dipped lower, slipping behind a ridge like a dying ember. Dusk was minutes away, and Easton never waited for permission when he could take control instead. She forced her breath out. We have to warn the sheriff. Already done, Caleb said. Sheriff Buckner's rallying men, but Pinkertons outnumber us. Eli met Clara's gaze. What Silas said earlier, what Noah told us, it matters now more than ever. Clara swallowed. Her voice cracked. Repeat it. Noah stepped closer, eyes filled with something hard and sad. Silas said your father doesn't just want you back. He wants to erase the marriage entirely, not with a legal challenge, with proof. Clara shook her head. Proof of what? Noah hesitated. He wants to show you never intended to marry Eli, that it was fraud, that you asked Silas to arrange it for protection, that Eli was unwilling, that you both walked into it with deceit. Clara staggered. But that isn't true. Silas can twist any truth into a lie, Noah said. He already did. His sworn statement claims the marriage was orchestrated by you. Eli stepped closer, steady, grounded. Clara, look at me. She lifted her eyes. You told the judge the marriage was valid because you believe it. That truth doesn't change because your father is twisting every lie he can find. Clara's breath trembled. But what if no? Eli said firmly. You aren't asking about law. You're asking about us. The world paused. Even the wind seemed to stop. Eli took her hands, holding them as though they weren't fragile at all. Do you wish the marriage had never happened? He asked quietly. Clara's voice broke. No. Do you wish it were someone else standing with you? No. Eli's thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away a tear she didn't realize had spilled. Then Silas's lies don't matter, and your father's power doesn't matter. What matters is what you choose now. Clara let out a shuddered breath. Then I choose you. Eli's eyes softened, but danger tightened every muscle in his body. Then we stand together. Before she could speak again, a shot rang out. Clara jerked. Eli yanked her behind him instinctively. Noah ducked and spun toward the noise. Thomas raised a hand, signaling for silence. Another shot cracked through the air, closer. The miner gasped. They're here, Pinkertons. Easton's men. Footsteps thundered down the street toward the courthouse. Eli pulled Clara close. We need to move. Where Clara breathed. Thomas stepped forward, eyes sharp as obsidian. To the place your father fears most. Clara blinked. And where is that? Thomas looked toward Main Street, where the townsfolk had begun to gather, not to flee, but to resist. Among the people, he said, in the open, where truth cannot hide. They ran, Eli holding Clara's hand, Noah scouting the corners, Thomas guarding their flank. Shots echoed behind them. Pinkertons shouted orders. Townfolk shouted warnings. It would be a confrontation, a final reckoning. Father against daughter. Power against people. Truth against tyranny. And Clara Easton would no longer run from any of it. Sometimes justice is not handed down from a bench. Sometimes it rises from the people who refuse to kneel. Clara Easton felt those words vibrate through her bones as she and Eli Red Elk burst out onto Main Street, the thunder of approaching Pinkertons echoing behind them. The whole town had gathered, lanterns swinging from posts, rifles in hand, boots planted firm in the dirt. The air buzzed like a storm about to crack open. Sheriff Buckner stood at the front of the crowd, shotgun in hand, jaw clenched tight. Martha Green held a rolling pin and a revolver, looking equally prepared to bake bread or break skulls. Noah Gray Fox perched on the roof above rifle steady. Thomas Running Bear walked beside Clara and Eli, his presence like a wall of earth and smoke. And there, striding down the street with a confidence that felt like a poison leaking into the ground, came Bartholomew Easton. Pinkertons fanned out behind him. Their boots slammed the dirt in cold, practiced rhythm. Their guns gleamed in the lantern light. Clara's father lifted a hand. Everything went silent. He looked at Clara, his eyes narrowing at the sight of her standing tall, unbroken, flanked by men he considered beneath him. Enough, Bartholomew Easton said. His voice rolled out smooth, steady, commanding. This ends now. The sheriff stepped forward. Judge Mercer is missing. Your men snatched him. That's kidnapping. Easton's gaze didn't shift. Judge Mercer is safe. He awaits the only rational outcome to this embarrassment. Clara felt her throat tighten. You tried to force his judgment. No, Easton said. I reminded him of his duty. You threatened him, Clara shot back. A murmur of outrage rippled through the crowd. Easton ignored it. Clara, come here. Now. His tone slid inside her ear like a cold blade controlling dismissive familiar. For years, she had wilted under that voice. For years, she had believed his anger was her fault. Not anymore. Clara stepped forward, shaking but resolute. I'm not coming with you. Easton's eyes darkened. You are done humiliating this family. You will return to Boston today. No, Clara said again louder. I am staying. Her father's patience snapped. Do not test me. You do not understand what I am capable of. Thomas Running Bear spoke, voice quiet but powerful. We understand well. That is why she stands with us. Easton turned on him, sneering. You have no place in this. Thomas took one step closer. The air grew colder. We are her place. Easton's jaw flexed. Agents, he ordered without looking back, take the girl. The Pinkertons advanced. Something inside Clara broke cleanly like a bone snapping into realignment. She stepped forward, raising her voice so all could hear, I am legally married. Law protects me. You cannot take me by force. Easton barked a laugh. Your marriage is invalid. Silas Donnelly has sworn to that. Clara swallowed. Silas lied. His lies belong to me now, Easton said. And documentation is more powerful than emotion. Eli stepped up beside Clara. You think paper is more powerful than truth? Easton scoffed. Truth is whatever I pay it to be. A sharp gasp went through the townsfolk. That slip, arrogant, careless, echoed like a strike of lightning. Sheriff Buckner lifted his shotgun. You might want to choose your words carefully, Easton. But Clara already felt the shift. People had heard it. People who had their own scars from powerful men. As the weight of his mistake settled, Clara turned to the crowd, voice trembling but loud. This is who he is. This is what he wants. Not justice. Control. Not a verdict, ownership. The Pinkertons tensed. Easton snapped. I said, take her. They surged forward. Eli drew his revolver. Noah fired a warning shot from the roof. Martha Green shouted, hold the line. Miners lifted rifles. Shopkeepers raised pistols. Mothers clutched children behind them. But the Pinkertons didn't stop. They stormed the line like a flood of cold steel. Clara's heart leapt into her throat as chaos exploded. Eli grabbed her, pulling her behind him. A Pinkerton lunged, swinging the butt of his rifle. Eli dodged, slammed his elbow into the man's jaw, and sent him sprawling. Thomas Running Bear moved with lethal precision, one clean blow, dropping another agent to the dirt. Noah fired from the roof, disarming a Pinkerton aiming at Clara. The sheriff fired into the air. Back down, he roared. But the Pinkertons pressed harder. One grabbed Clara's arm. She screamed. Eli spun, fury ignited, and ripped her free, throwing his entire weight into the agent until they both crashed into the ground. Clara, run, Eli shouted. I won't leave you. Run! She didn't. Not this time. Instead, Clara bent, grabbed a handful of dirt, and threw it into the Pinkerton's eyes. He stumbled, blinded. Eli's fist connected with his jaw. Pain shot up Eli's knuckles, but he didn't stop. He would never stop. Pinkertons closed in from all sides. Until a deafening crack split the night. Everyone froze. Judge Mercer stood at the end of the street, lantern in one hand, shotgun in the other. His coat was torn, his face bruised, but his eyes blazed with furious clarity. I escaped your thugs, he said, glaring at Easton. and I will not be bullied into corrupting my bench. The street held its breath. Mercer lifted a paper. My verdict stands. He faced Clara. Your marriage is legitimate, recognized, binding. Clara nearly collapsed. He turned to Easton. And your claim over her is void. The Pinkertons hesitated. Mercer's voice grew louder. Bartholomew Easton, you and your men have committed kidnapping, bribery, attempted violence, and interference in territorial law. You no longer have authority here. The sheriff cocked his shotgun. Drop your weapons. Easton did not move. His face contorted into fury so sharp it was almost inhuman. This is not over, he hissed. I will crush this town. I will bury every one. Of a rock flew past his head. Then another. Then Boots stepped forward. Dozens, people of Deadwood, standing between Clara and her father. Not with guns, not with fear, with unity. Eli stepped beside Clara, breath ragged. It is over, he told her father, because she chose her life. Easton trembled, not with fear, with rage. But he saw it. The reality. The ending he could not alter. Slowly, stiffly, he nodded to the Pinkertons. Stand down. Weapons lowered. The tension broke like a wave collapsing on the shore. Clara felt her knees buckle. Eli caught her, held her, didn't let go. You're free, he whispered. She looked up at him, eyes full, throat tight. For the first time, she whispered back, Believe it. The crowd cheered. Martha burst into tears. Noah exhaled. Thomas closed his eyes in silent gratitude. Deadwood had chosen its side. And Bartholomew Easton, defeated, diminished, turned away, retreating into the darkness he had once commanded. The battle was over. I will